I don't have all the answers, obviously, but if there's anything that I can share that can be of help, especially those of you who are, in your teenage years, in your 20s, there are lots of questions that must be passing you by, or you're having conversations with friends where you're having difficulty answering, or you're kind of caught in a bind where you don't know how to answer things. Sometimes it just takes a little extra knowledge for you to see the real picture. A lot of times I see teenagers talking and they get confused. It's because they don't have the complete picture, so they get confused. But if we can just add to the complete picture, or at least bigger picture, you'll find it's much easier to understand the truth, So let's get to it. Whoever has any questions, go ahead. They're all posting it?
Yeah.
Oh, everybody posted here. So it's enough.
Scan the QR code, but
Yeah. See, he's not shy.
yeah. Thank you. Question number 1 for you, HAJJ Hassanain, is: should we always have a feeling of spirituality when doing acts of worship?
Should we always have a feeling of spirituality when we're doing worship? Well, there are different levels of spirituality. I would advise that you have at least the basic feelings of spirituality, which is purpose in life. You'll notice that all actions and transactions in Islam require intention. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُكُمْ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Indeed, your deeds are subject to intentions. So if your intention is there, then the deed is valuable. Otherwise, that deed is accidental. For if you didn't intend to do something, we call that accidental. And an accidental good deed has no value, just like an accidental bad deed is not punishable. So have intention. Another one. Have a good intention in everything you do. And that's the basic level of spirituality. Qurbatan ilallah. I'm going to go pray. I'm saying my prayers, I'm thinking of all the things I got to do during the day. I'm a bit distracted, but I'm still praying. Okay? You shouldn't be praying like that all the time, but every once in a while you and I have what we call distractions. We're disturbed. Somebody gave me bad news today. I'm in the middle of prayer. It's bothering me in the middle of my prayer. That's fine. As long as you know why you're praying, who you're praying to, and generally what you're praying, then there is a level of spirituality. Then there'll be days where you'll be in another level of spirituality, where every word that you utter in prayer is almost like you're flying in the clouds and you're feeling a different world, where you've touched another dimension. That's something we all hope for in all our prayers, but it's impossible. You and I cannot have that level of spirituality unless we become infallible or close to the infallibles. Where if you look at a graph and you look at your biorhythmic cycle, right? It's got like a sine curve, right? So it's up and down, up and down, up. So you have a trough, right? And a peak. Crest, yes. Thank you, Dr. Asi. May God bless you. And as a result, the peaks, the higher the crest is when you're spiritually high, and then the lower part is when you're low in spirit. Now, the further apart you are, the more imbalanced you are as a person. Where you have this euphoric spirituality, then you're a devil the next day, and then the third day you're like an angel, and then it's almost like you're bipolar. Right? So that's not good. Typically, we have a wave, but it's not a big, where the amplitude is not very high. I'm speaking a little bit of science here. What you want to do is you want to lower the... yeah, okay. Yeah, because you got too many microphones competing with each other.
There you go. Is that better?
I don't know. I feel like I'm a teddy bear. Okay.
You're a famous person.
I don't know. I don't know what fame is, but inshallah, may God accept me on Judgment Day. Anyway, you want to lower that. So the idea is that, so our imams, if you look at it on a chart, I just want to be a little bit graphic here. Let's say there's 0 and there's 10. Okay, and you want to be close to 10. 10 means you're very close to God. You're constantly conscious of God. So you want to move your wave higher, and that's by doing good deeds, by reflecting, by meditating, by transacting, by purifying yourself, doing istighfar, indulging in more spirituality, asking God to give you more wisdom, more knowledge, more experience, so you get more grounded. What's going to happen is your wave will move higher, number one. And you want to reduce the amplitude, meaning you want to make it more flat. You want to make it basically almost like a line. And you want that line to be near to 10. Iblis has a line near to 0. So you don't want to be there, you want to be up there. I hope it makes sense. That's kind of a...
As we have 14 questions already.
Okay, good. 14 is a good number.
I'm going to ask you to keep it
Very
concise.
Shia number.
Alhamdulillah, you're right. We have 2 or 3 questions related to the same topic. And the topic is, what is your marriage advice and what type of questions should we ask before...
That's a big question. What's your marriage advice? Well, it's a big question, but marriage to me is like one of the most powerful milestones in life. People who have achieved a lot of wealth, success in business will tell you that no matter how much money you make, no matter how popular you become, no matter how much power you have in the world, if you don't have a good spouse, life is going to be hell. And if you have a good spouse, and we'll define good, there's something incredible that happens, almost like magical. When Allah says, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً, there's very deep message in it. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَمِنْ آيَاتِي أَنْ خَلَقَ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. And of His signs, He made mates from among yourselves, so that you have peace with the other. لِتَسْكُنُوا, you have sukoon. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً, and He has put between the two of you mutual love, وَرَحْمَةً, and mercy. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. These are signs for a community that reflects. And it's the hardest thing in the world these days, finding a good spouse. You know, Harvard did the longest study, and they found that the most difficult thing that we all want to achieve is good relationships. Everybody thinks when you're a teenager, you ask them, what do you want to achieve? You want to become rich and famous. But when you start growing older, you realize that's all hogwash. It's not important. Becoming rich and famous doesn't make you happy. I've met a lot of rich people in my life. Some of my relatives are extremely wealthy. I have friends, I have people in the corporate arena, even in my business. I used to be with some of the richest people around. You know, I used to sit with them and go to their homes and on the yachts, and they would invite me, and I saw nothing but just a dark hole, like a black hole. It's just sucking you, you know, like a black hole. There's no happiness. They look at you, they look over their shoulders, everything is suspicion, everything is about money. It's a rat race. It's like living in a jungle, you know, where all these insects and animals are going to attack you any moment. That's how it is to live in that world. So I wouldn't advise you that way. So when you ask a teenager or a relatively young person in their 20s, what's your greatest objective? Many times people say, I want to be rich and famous. Oh, I wish I could be popular where I can stand in front of an audience and speak and everybody talks about me. I wish I was famous. Well, you don't want fame. Trust me, it's not an easy thing to manage. Okay, fame is a very difficult, it's a slippery road. It's like wealth. It's extremely powerful. When you get on a pulpit and you speak in front of an audience, it's a huge responsibility. When some teenagers come to me and say, brother, teach me how to become a public speaker like you, I ask them, why do you want to do this? Well, I want to become famous. I said, watch out. You don't want to have the pulpit of the prophet with that intention. Get away from it. You might think, no, but then all the girls will come to me and talk to me and give me their phone numbers, you know, I'll be famous. No, that's the wrong reason. Or I'll be rich and famous, everybody will talk to me, you know. No, you don't want fame and glory. You don't want the world to love you because of that. No. Okay, public speaking and public respect has a huge weight on you. Every move you make is under watch, and you have to be extremely cognizant of your responsibility. What we all want is to succeed in whatever we can. If we become famous, great, but that's not the goal. The goal is to achieve tranquility in the way of Allah. You can be a millionaire, a billionaire, it doesn't matter. If you know how to manage your money, great, you got it. But if you can get a good spouse, Oh God, it's the best thing in life. But it's the hardest thing. Why? Not because marriage is a difficult thing. When people ask me that question, I say, to me, finding a good spouse, and in an analogy, is like walking up Mount Everest backwards. It's the hardest thing in the world. You can be a successful business person, you make a lot of money, there are lots of things you can do. You can even win athletic challenges, but to get a good spouse is very, very difficult. Those who have good spouses that live together, and love each other and guide each other is a gift that many people in the world unfortunately don't have. Many people I know who are married, when you really listen to their conversations, they have children, but they're not happy. You can tell. There's something conflicting. Now, is that by nature? No. I believe it's because we are reckless in our obligations towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or we misunderstand the laws of Allah, that we make life difficult for everyone around us. As a result, we don't raise our children properly, so it's very hard to find a spouse, because they're all entitled in the modern days, especially in the modern days, because in the modern days, divorce is equivalent to getting married or not getting married at all. It's a common thing these days, right? Socially, it's acceptable for you to be living with somebody unmarried. Whereas in the olden days, it was a taboo. In the olden days, to get a divorce was tantamount to self-destruction. And women and men used to just deal with it till they died. Now, I don't propose that idea either. I don't think that's a good idea either, because who wants to live in hell on earth, right? It's not a good thing. But I do believe that when people are married, if they have a conversation with each other and find their rough spots, or they find their disputes, then marriages can be much better. I had a case, I remember, of a couple that was fighting all the time. They were throwing stuff at each other. They went for counseling, and the counselor really helped them realign with each other, because the wife had certain demands the husband was ignoring, and he had certain demands she was ignoring. Classic social problem. The problem we have today is that our kids are exposed to early dating very easily, and girls and boys today, because of social media, the access to the opposite gender, if not the same gender, is so easy that it's getting highly abused. And as a result, research shows that when you're like, let's say 13, 14, and you fall in love with someone, I see it all the time because I deal with kids, you'll see that that love that they have when they get attached to somebody or they get attracted to somebody, it's pure love. It's a pure kind of love. But it's very, what we call nascent. It's very, the right word to use is, it's immature, highly immature, but it's pure. It's like that child who smiles at you. It's a pure smile, it's magnificent, but it doesn't have wisdom in it, doesn't have knowledge. It's just visual, and there's something of an electric energy, but he doesn't know what to do with it. Teenagers are like that, by the way. Teenagers find the opposite gender, they fall in love, they want it, now either because of social pressure, all my friends are talking about that pretty girl, everybody wants that girl. You see it on social media, you see it on Instagram and on Thread, and everybody's desperately, I need a partner, I need a boyfriend, I need a girlfriend, and you see they're all the time dancing, showing themselves off, trying to just get somebody to give them an accolade, please hit the like button so that I become famous. It's all fake. It doesn't stick. It doesn't have longevity. That's why people who date early in school typically don't align in marriage. It's a very rare thing. Like maybe 1 out of 10 will end up in a marriage that will have a relationship that will last, because it's experimental. The boy likes this girl. They start talking to each other every day. They start sending messages to each other. There's this fuzzy feeling. The butterflies are in your stomach, You're in love. And you keep sending hearts to each other, and you're in love, right? I love you, you love me, I love you. And then she starts saying, hey, what are you doing? And the boy says, well, I'm with my friends. Well, why are you with your friends? Why didn't you call me? The boy starts saying, well, you're getting on my nerves now. Or the boy does that to the girl. Like, what are you doing? So they start to latch on, and they're not matured. They don't know what to do with each other. So they clash. And when they clash, they're brokenhearted. And when the break takes place, it's painful, you're scarred. And that scar becomes a sign for tomorrow's relationship. Now, the next one you're going to find, either you're going to beat them to the scar, or you're going to scar them. And that cycle continues. And by the time you're ready to get married, you're so scarred. Anybody who wants to marry you, don't trust them, da 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 da. And suddenly you find marriage is an impossible relationship now. So unfortunately, early dating causes a lot of scarring. Sharia-wise, if the young generation is taught to get married early, it's a different proposition. Not dating, but marriage. It's a whole different ballgame, because you will not take the girl to the dance or to the movies or to the motel or to the hotel or to your house or to her house, because you will see her as a potential spouse. You will see her as the mother of your children. This is why marriage changes perspectives. So many times when the teenagers come to me and says, oh, I'm in love with this girl, I smile and I say, okay, so when's the wedding? And they look at me like, are you crazy? Wedding? What wedding? I'm just dating this girl. Yeah, because the social structure says date, use and abuse, throw it, recycle it, get the next one. So what's the proposition with that kind of attitude, socially acceptable in the world today on the 5 continents, that marriage is going to work? We're poisoning the waters every day. So now our divorce rates are 60, 70%, meaning more than 50%. Why is that the case? Well, because we're poisoning the waters every day. And this young generation is left to become a victim. And I agree, it's hard. When your hormones, when you're 13, 14 these days, your hormones are starting to explode, and you just don't know what to do with it. You're lonely, you want somebody to love you. I mean, I've seen girls and boys, just anything that moves, and they can look at them, they're happy. Like this, I think this person loves me. Anything, just it's got 2 legs, okay, just look at me. Just look at me and I love you. Like, do you have any criteria? It doesn't matter, I'm so lonely. I'll take anything. And I say to them, my God, what is this desperation? Well, because society is promoting that. When I was in school, my years when I grew up was very different from what you guys are growing up with. I didn't have social media, thank God. I was thinking about it the other day. I said, what if I had this fun? Because I go to the gym, I work out, I'm at school, I see these kids are constantly doing this. I said, when I grew up, I didn't have this. And I was sitting in the sauna, I think it was, and I was saying, what if I had this? My God, what would I be doing? I'd probably be a zombie on social media all the time, just scrolling, like, how many people like me. I don't know what kind of a creature I'd be. So you guys are really, honestly, I feel for you, but I also think there's a great side to it. I think this generation is the most educated generation in the annals of human history. You, as a generation today, me included, have the most knowledge than all the preceding societies on earth. Our knowledge base, if I say to you, satellites, you got satellites, we got structure, we got moon landings, Mars landing. We're talking about scientific terminologies. We're talking about DNA. We're talking about quantum computing. Are you kidding me? Quantum computing. You know what's quantum computing? It's going to blow this computer business. You won't even have computers. You and I will be walking and the computers will be in front of our faces and data will be flowing like, forget about this internet that we're talking about. Everything will be internet connected, and forget about plugging things into the wall. You'll be recharging just by walking around. They're making highways now. The cars just drive and the cars get recharged electrically. Think about the future. It's around the corner, and these cars are no longer going to be cars. They're going to talk to you. You're going to give them instructions. Hey, come here, and the car will come itself, park, do this, do that. Cars will talk to each other. They'll be competing for a parking space. That's this generation now. We didn't have this before. So we're highly educated from the point of view of knowledge base. The problem is many of us don't know what to do with it. We're confused, we're lost. The drug use and medications are on the rise. Marijuana being legalized, I think, is a huge mistake. See all these potheads, or what do you call them? Weed heads. What's another one? Crackheads. Yeah, they walk, it's like so. And you look at these people, they're so beautiful to look at, but they're damaging, self-destructive. You're a pharmacist, I'm sure when you first open up your pharmacy, the ones who are addicted are the ones standing at the door, right? waiting for that prescription to be given, right? Yeah, see, poor guys. They're self-destructing. I mean, when there's a beautiful religion, when there's prayer, when there's ibadah, there's love, there is indulgence. People used to say, "Why don't you drink?" I said, "I'm high. I'm always high." People said, "Well, what are you talking about?" I said, "I'm high on life. I look around, man, I'm so high. I don't need anything. Why should I take anything? I'm so high, like, forget it. I love this world too much. I can't get enough of it." So my advice is, that was about spouse, right? Oh my God.
Advice. Practical marital.
Marital, yeah.
So think.
Prepare yourself to be a good husband. Prepare yourself to be a good wife. Be willing to sacrifice and don't have too many demands. Have low expectations, but have high moral values. And see your future spouse as the parent of your child. And have meaningful conversations. And don't talk nonsense with each other. Yeah, a little, chatty talk is good, but fun is all good, love is all good, lovey-dovey talk is good. But get real and don't be serious either. Don't be too serious. Okay, we're going to talk about marriage, we're going to have a contract. No, be relaxed. But I've been involved in too many marriages that are good and broken. I've dealt with it too much to the point where I don't even get involved anymore. But I have my own theory, but I really believe that if we raise our children well, even at a young age, you find a good spouse and you want to marry her, nurture it. I've got teenagers coming to me, says, "I found a girl, I think she'll be very good." I said, "Good, have you had a conversation? Have you spoken to the father?" Prepare your pathways, it's not haram. And I think the idea of marriage should be instilled in our kids. A lot of parents come and say, no, don't talk about marriage to my children. I said, if you don't, you're going to ask for problems. Because if the child is programmed to think that I'm going to get married in my late 20s or early 30s, and in the meantime, all my hormones are going in all these directions, I don't know what to do with it. So I'm going to have a little fun in the meantime because marriage is taboo. This is when haram comes in. But if marriage is the driving force of your goal, then either you will marry early or you won't indulge in premarital affairs because marriage will stop you.
Next question, is it better to ask Allah?
If you take my mic, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One last mic. Is it better to ask Allah what you want or what He wants? Sometimes I feel embarrassed to ask for something specific when I know Allah knows best.
It's always good to ask Allah what He wants, but it is your right to ask Allah what you want. But what you should want is what Allah would love for you to want.
You say, Allah, what's best? You're saying me what's best.
No, in other words, there are lots of things I want. I want to succeed. I want to be happy. I want to have tranquility. Yeah, my God, give it to me. Whether it's with money, whether it's with whatever, just give it. In my life, I studied molecular science. I studied science. I wasn't sure. And the reason I went into molecular science was because I was a very curious person. Curiosity kills the cat sometimes. And for me, I was curious to know how life originates. From childhood, I was a curious kid. And when I studied science, I was actually going to go into medicine. I was going to become a doctor. No disrespect to our doctors here. But I worked in a hospital for 3 years. I was in the OR. I was working in the OR with all the doctors and all the surgeons. And I watched medicine. I was in the hospital for 3 years. I loved it, but I just realized there's more to life for me than being a medical doctor. So I went into molecular biology. I studied molecular science because I felt that even in pharmacy, in medicine, everybody was dependent on DNA technology. It was the DNA, the study of the Human Genome Project, that was dictating medication. It was dictating, all the cures and how the doctors would intervene. It was all at the DNA level. So I said, I want to get to the root of the problem. I want to study DNA. I want to see how DNA works. I was curious. So I went into that study. I did my studies in that area. But I was also very curious about human behavior. So it wasn't just biology. I was very concerned about human psychology, human behavior. So I got into what we call behavioral genetics. I figured the two worlds were the best combination for me. So I studied behavioral genetics, which was how much is nature, how much is nurture, what is the human psychology, cognitive psychology, all these different levels of mental states, and how is that affecting the DNA, epigenetics, and et cetera, et cetera. So I really got into it and I loved it. But I wasn't sure if that was going to be my career. So when I got out of my university, I got a good job. I was doing good, I was making good money. But I realized there's more to life than this. And I said, Alhamdulillah, I've achieved this, and but there's more to life. So while I was working, I was very busy doing tabligh. I was my late teens and my early 20s, I was already dealing with youth. I wanted to prevent them from going wrong because I felt very blessed that Allah brought me to America and saved me from falling into the abysmal pit of things that I could have done that were very dangerous. And I grew up in New York City, so you get the point. And thank God I didn't. So I felt, it's time for me to answer Allah. And I know people ask me, how'd you come up with that idea as a teenager living in New York? How'd you come up with answering Allah? Didn't you have the passions of having fun in life? Well, I was very analytical. I assessed things and I was very observant of things. And I realized, yes, I can have pleasure, but I think this is the right investment. And I calculated, I said, look, I'm 18, 19. I'm going to blink and I'll be 40. And I'm going to do the second blink, I'll be 60. And the third blink, I'm going to be ready to go back to God. So I don't know. Do I want to waste my time? I just jumped into it. And I asked Allah, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want, but oh Allah, just take me where I belong. Just show me what I'm supposed to do. And subhanAllah, Allah just took me there. And I started doing things, projects. Next thing I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I was still doing my research, but I started my IT company. And I started my IT because I wanted to do tabligh. I wanted to spread Islam on the internet. So I kind of took all these major domain names, and my company really grew globally. I was doing international work. I started getting very heavy into Fortune 500 companies, very skilled, and I was making ridiculous kind of money. I mean, I was on this very incredible tide that I picked up early in the dot-com era. I never studied IT, never took a course in computer science, but I was writing code, I was reverse engineering, I was like everything. To me, it was like the canvas of God, and Allah says, enjoy, do whatever you want. And the more I got into it, the more exciting it became. But I realized all this wealth that was coming, I knew this is a trap. So I backed off a little bit on it, and I said, no, I think I know what I need to do investment-wise. Thank God Allah showed me. I tell you, honestly, I don't like to speak about it in public because it's a very personal thing, but when you ask Allah something, don't underestimate when He answers you. I'm getting emotional because honestly, when I asked Allah when I was about 10 years old, I remember. I was in Africa, and I just stood at the mosque on the night of Laylatul Qadr. And I remember I was looking at the sky. I said, God, I believe in you. Although my faith was, typical kid, 10-year-old. I said, but I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And I remember. And a lot of things I wanted were very universal, generic. It wasn't like, I want a Ferrari, I want a palace. I wasn't praying for that. I was just saying, I want to be wise, I want to be smart, I want to be confident, I want this and I want that. And subhanAllah, I don't think there was a single thing I asked Allah that was rejected. That's why I'm so just, people look at me and say, I remember when I was in my late 20s, I was very busy doing work, and some doctors and rich people came and says, you're very talented, you're educated, you have all this. Why are you so busy doing work for the youth and running camps for kids? And I looked at them and said, if you knew what I see, you would quit your job and join me. But how can I convince you? So Allah showed me something, and it hasn't stopped. And I'm eternally grateful for that. So I want to say that to all of you. Plan your future early. Be careful of what you do. You can make a lot of mistakes and it can really take you on the sidelines. Just ask Allah for help. I'm no angel, okay? I'm not somebody who's special from the perspective of better than any of you. I'm speaking heart to heart that every one of you in this room is the same. My potential of what I saw is exactly what you have, and you just have to know how to press the buttons. And just have faith, and don't lose faith. You will be surprised, and it'll come. When I was a teenager, I remember, I'm telling you, I'll give you one quick point. When I was a teenager, I was very athletic, very well built. You know, I mean, I could play tennis for 8 straight hours with my eyes closed. I was a long distance swimmer, skier, I did everything. And I looked at when I was a teenager, when I was like 16, 17, I didn't like myself. I thought I was ugly. I didn't look good, something wrong with me. Everything was wrong with me. But thank God something kept me going. When I was in my 30s and 40s, and even now in my age that I am, I looked at my pictures and people say, oh my God, you look so good. Is that you? I said, yeah, that was me. So, oh my God, you look like an actor, you look like a Hollywood star, whatever. I said, do you think so? I said, yeah, of course, oh my God. I said, I thought I was the ugliest thing that walked on this earth. So what was it? What was my problem? Lack of self-confidence. Everything was greener around me. There's something wrong with me. I see many of you, you're like that. Everybody's better than you. I can see it in your faces. Even the way you walk, I can tell. But I look at you and say, no. You are magnificent, you are beautiful, and don't ever say that. What? Are you kidding me? No, I'm ugly. My nose is like this, my hair. I said, stop. You have no idea how beautiful you are. And that was the stupidity I went through in my life. And I think about it, I said, man, Shaitan was holding me back. Now, maybe on the other side, if I looked in the mirror and said, oh my God, I'm Narcissus. I'm the most beautiful thing that ever walked this earth. Yeah, I'd be arrogant and I'd be cocky. So that's the bad side. But also let it not be debilitating. And when you walk around with people, people admire confidence. And if you look at them and you can just not say anything, just nonverbal communication, people will gauge you in a second, like, wow, there's something about you I like. What is it that you have? And I remember when I started making money in my business, I used to go to all these big CEOs that sit in their conference rooms, and I was one of the persons proposing to do their big project, $1 million project, $5 million, $7 million project. And there were so many competitors in New York City, big companies. I would sit with them and the CEO or the CFO or the CTO would look at me. I said, Mr. Rajabali, we like you. I said, yeah, why? We don't know, but we want to give you the job. I said, okay. And I get the jobs, and I get the jobs, and I get the job. I said, what is it? Like, I'm not the #1 company in New York. Why am I getting all this big project? Well, they sense you, they read you. And if they feel the energy in you, you got it. It's not about your CV, how much education you have, which college you went to, or how smart you are. They sense your energy in the room. And that's what I'm advising us all. Ask Allah to give you that energy. And you'll be amazed how quickly, in a short time, you'll be successful in whatever field you go to.
Next question that we have, brothers and sisters, we're not going to get to all of the questions. I'll hit the main one. In your lecture, you spoke about, I believe it was Karbala, and like Sayyidah Zainab, how she saw all of these atrocities happen, but they still stood firm on their faith. How is it that we can combat anxiety with Islam, similar to the Ahlul Bayt? So many bad things happen, but their trust in Allah.
There's a direct relationship to anxiety with faith in God. The stronger your faith, the less anxiety you have. Next question.
Are the Ahlul Bayt's name mentioned in the Quran? And if not,
By actual name?
by name?
No.
And if not, why not?
Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to focus on Allah and the Prophet. The only name of a companion of the Holy Prophet that's mentioned by name was Zayd ibn Harith in the Quran, and the only reason his name was mentioned was because there was a technicality in marriage for the Arabs of that time. If you had an adopted son who married a woman and divorced her, the Arab tradition was he was forbidden to marry that woman. She was almost like became mahram. But shar'an in Islam, if you have an adopted child and your adopted son marries a woman and divorces her, the father of the adopted child, meaning the adopted father, can marry the woman. Therefore Allah mentions Zayd ibn Harith, because Zayd was married to this woman by the name of Zainab. He divorced her and the Prophet married Zainab, and Allah exposes that. But it is not the standard of the Quran to mention the name of the companions or the family of the Prophet. By design, the Quran strategically leaves all names outside. In fact, the Quran only mentions like 20 somewhat names of prophets, but there's 124,000 of them. But Allah just strategically shows us that this is the root of the faith of God, and you're going to extrapolate from that. Now, Allah doesn't mention the names because imagine Imam Ali's name is mentioned in the Quran. Imam Ali succeeded the Holy Prophet. By nature, you and I would have put more emphasis on Imam Ali because his name is in the Quran. Whereas Allah never wants us to leave Allah and the Prophet. Therefore, the names of any companions or the Imams or Ahlul Bayt is strategically removed. In other words, not removed, but not mentioned in the Quran by strategy. Now, if the person from another school of thought comes and asks, yeah, you believe in Ahlul Bayt, Ali ibn Abi Talib is the Khalifa, where's his name mentioned? I always smile. I said, okay, his name is mentioned all over the Quran, but by attribute. But let's go there. So why do you believe in Khalifas when your Khalifas' names are not mentioned in the Quran either? So if you're going to pose a question to me, why don't you look in the mirror first? Yeah, why do you follow? And the funny part is we believe that the Khalifa was chosen by Allah and the Prophet. You believe he wasn't chosen by Allah and the Prophet. But you believe that the Khalifa was very important after the Prophet. So then you decided to choose the Khalifa on behalf of God and the Prophet. So that means God and the Prophet left the most important part of life and left it to you, and you don't even know how to do it. And now you're asking me the integrity of whose name is in the Quran? Excuse me. I think you and I need to sit down and have a real conversation, first of all, because something is seriously off base here. Because you're going to ask me about my Khalifa. What about yours? Mine is chosen by Allah and the Prophet by the command in the Quran. Yours was never chosen by the Prophet and Allah. Therefore, sunnah-wise and by the command of Allah, it's haram for you to have a Khalifa. Because if Allah and the Prophet never chose, you can't choose. So how come you have Khalifa Rashidun? You shouldn't. Because if the Prophet couldn't, you shouldn't. He can't, you shouldn't. Look at the absurdity of this question. Yeah.
What inspired you in the vision becoming an Islamic speaker?
I never wanted to be a speaker. I never aspired to be a public speaker. I'm just opinionated. And my opinion just echoes. People pull me for it because I have an opinion. I think because I drove myself early on to be a driver, to take the reins of the horse and to become the rider, by nature I got pulled into public life. But I never aspired to this microphone. The microphone and the videos, like I never watched my lectures. I never, there's thousands of lectures, at least hundreds on YouTube of my lectures. I've been lecturing for a long time. I don't usually watch them. I don't have aspiration for public speaking, but I do speak in public. I don't mind it because I feel it's an obligation and I need to. But I don't get excited when I get the microphone. It doesn't excite me. Because it's a great position to have. And public speaking is an art that many people don't have. But just because I can speak in public doesn't make me right. There are a lot of devilish people who are very eloquent in speech, and they speak a lot of nonsense. That doesn't make them good. So just because if I can speak, it doesn't make that. But my belief, I think, is because I was so involved with the youth. What really, and I'll tell you very briefly, when I was a teenager, how old are you? Yeah, when I was your age, 14, 15, I was lost. I was a good kid. Didn't do any haram, I didn't have, like I had friends who used to do weed and drugs and stuff, but they were like high school friends. But I never really was close to them because I was very athletic. So all my friends were athletes. And all of us were very healthy. We were very much into good health, So all my friends were non-Muslims, by the way. I didn't have any Muslim friends. I grew up with completely non-Muslim friends.
How'd you grow up? Where?
In New York.
Okay. So, when did you come here?
In the early 70s.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mike, how-
So now you know my age. No, I came as a young child in this country, and I grew up with non-Muslims. And they taught me Islam. But because my parents had a strong root, and my father told me, he says, I'm coming to America on one condition. Because when my parents decided to move to America, my grandfather was very religious. My grandfather, my mother's father especially, was like an alim, he was very, very learned. He was hafiz, he knew the Quran, the Bible. He used to debate people in pub. My grandfather was a very wise man. He told my mother, he said, you're going to the land of the kuffar. There's no Islam there. If you're going to go there, then you establish Islam there, otherwise don't go. So my father said, okay, and my mother. So when they landed in New York, the first thing they did was they established a community, an Islamic movement. My father was very active. He spent a lot of money and time, and my mother too. And as a result, I was sort of getting the benefits of my parents' vision. So because of that, religion was rooted in me, grounded. But all my friends were non-Muslims. I would go on vacations on weekends, sometimes for a whole week with my friends. I mean, who would do that with non-Muslim friends, right? It's risky. But my friends were very good, and they knew I was a Muslim, and they would do everything to respect my religion. So it was prayer time, they would remind me. I was one time water skiing. I remember I had just learned how to water ski. I think probably 15 years old, a little older than you. I learned how to water ski. It was so much fun. We had our own boat, used to go away for the weekend. Imagine, I'm the only son in my family. My mother's letting me go with non-Muslim, people. It's very high chance you're going to lose faith, right? So I don't advise that. But I always questioned God, religion, who am I, why am I here? Anyway, long story short, because I used to tell them, listen, I'm a Muslim, and I wasn't a, strict practicing Muslim, but I told them I'm a Muslim. That's my identity, and I don't drink. I don't have premarital relations. I don't date. That's just the way I live. They respected me. So I was water skiing, I remember, and I was having a great time, and he stopped, and I just sank in the water. And as he's pulling me out of the boat, I looked at him and said, why'd you stop? I didn't ask you to stop. You give a thumbs down when you want to stop. He said, no, we got to go back. It's your prayer time. You got to go pray. I looked at the guy, the father, because my friends were Asians, and the father was the one driving the boat. He said, you got to go pray. I said, subhanAllah, I'm thinking, like this is a non-Muslim who's stopping me in the middle of a fun time, and he's remembering my prayers. Like, what a world am I living in? Look at the gift Allah gave me. We'd go to the restaurants, they would go in first, they'd say, okay, what's the ingredient? Then they'll come and say, okay, you can eat here. There's halal food here. I think you can eat here. I didn't even have to go to the restaurant to ask about halal. They would do the halal for me. Those are the kind of friends that Allah blessed me with. Well, we didn't have much conversations about religion, but our lifestyles were just around that. But I was curious, I was studying, I thought maybe atheism is right. I became a closet agnostic. I wasn't sure about Islam. I thought maybe this is all ritual, all these 12 imams, maybe just a made up story, We just made it up just like the Hindus have gods. Maybe we made our imams up. And I started questioning everything. Like everything was on the table. And I started to reverse engineer, and I said, okay, I'm going to find out where the truth is. And I came up with a structure. And as I broke it down, there were days I was so confused. I thought, is Islam right? Does he even really exist? I was confused because my data was limited. But subhanAllah, just the right people walked in and they said things to me, and I looked and I said, oh wait, I used to go to Bible study. People thought I'd become a Christian. But as I looked, the deeper I got into it, I said, oh my God, wait a minute. There's something about this religion, Islam, that I didn't understand. And the more I exposed it, I said, oh my God, like I was born in this religion? Like how? Like, am I chosen? Like, how did I get the right one? And Ahl al-Bayt Shia, like, how did I get into this one? You know, my great-grandfather was not a Ithna Ashari, he was an Ismaili. He was from the Ismaili sect, my great-grandfather. When he saw the Aga Khan, he said, this guy's a fake, he's an imposter. So my great-grandfather moved away. My great-grandfather was very reputable. He moved away, they wanted to kill him. He said, no. He said, we will follow the true religion. He became Ahl al-Bayti follower. My great-grandfather, thank God he did that. I became the beneficiary. I inherited. Remember today I talked about inheritance? Well, guess what? There's another part of inheritance that I'm going to talk about tomorrow. The other part where you inherit faith and you inherit the right religion, what a gift of God. That's the best thing in life. And the more I got into it, the more I fell in love with it. And I would debate atheists, and I started getting into it, and I was always winning. And I said, why am I winning? I got confused, and then eventually I honed the art of debate. So one-on-one, I'd sit with atheists, with Christians, with agnostics, with Catholics, with Protestants. I'd go to church, and I'd question, what's this? Why is this? Why? They say, oh, you're asking too many questions. Get out of here. You're the Antichrist. And I would smile. I said, oh, so I'm asking the right questions. I love Christ, and you're calling me Antichrist? I said, I must be hitting the truth. And the stronger it got, when I finished college, I said, I'm going to give this to the kids. I went through something. I'm going to give this to the kids because I don't want them going through what I went through. I started talking to the kids logically, rationally, and they were just like turning on. They were looking at me like, oh my God, this is so true. They started becoming very spiritual, not in a, how would you say, not in a way that they became zealots, but rather, oh, Islam is beautiful. We go skiing, we'd go water skiing, we go play tennis. It'd be like 40 of us on the tennis courts. We're all playing tennis. Everybody's having sisters, brothers. We're all, sisters on one side. We're playing tennis. I was teaching everybody to play tennis. Everybody became a really good tennis player. Salat time, we all come and pray Jamaat together. Say, hey, this is amazing. We're having fun and we're remembering God. Oh my God, this is amazing. We'd go skiing. We'd go skiing for weekends. We'd stay in chalets and go ski in, ski out. And all these kids are with us and we're praying Salah and we're just loving life. As I say, getting high on life. And the more it happened, the more I got sucked in and people noticed it, and that's how I became a public person. Yes, brother?
Why did Imam Mahdi go into hiding?
That's a great question. So Imam Sahib Zaman went into hiding by the will of Allah. And I believe ghaiba is a very high level of trials. God is unseen, Day of Judgment is unseen, tomorrow is unseen, what you will earn tomorrow is unseen. The entire trial of the human being from God is about the unseen. So if you even go to Wall Street and say, listen, I'm going to do an investment for yesterday's charts. And the investor will look at you and say, you're nuts, you're crazy. Yesterday is over. No, I want to buy that stock that got 100% gain yesterday. The guy will look at you, you're crazy, this can go to zero tomorrow. The question is, what's your investment for tomorrow? I said, but tomorrow I don't have a chart. He says, exactly. And if you know how to do it, you're going to become rich. I said, wow, so financially, if I know what's tomorrow, and I just know how to play, like Warren Buffett is good. You see, he controls the market, so he knows all the insides. So he can invest in like BYD. When he invested in BYD, which is the automaker from China, it was a very early company, and it was worth only a few dollars. Okay, and Warren Buffett got access to it, and he bought millions of shares. Today, it's making billions of dollars just by BYD because he had access. So ghaiba is the high level of trial from Allah. God took Imam away from us and put him behind a curtain. He forced us to rise and do ijtihad. And therefore the ghaiba of the Imam is very strategic, it's very powerful, and it's very functional. And people may say, what's the benefit of the Imam being behind a curtain, right? Isn't the next question you would ask? Like, what's the benefit of the Imam being hidden?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. So listen, the devil is hidden always, right? Have you seen the devil?
No.
You believe in him?
No.
No, do you believe he exists?
Yes.
Do you believe he whispers in your ears?
Yeah, when I don't pray for Fajr.
How do you know he does that? Because he's in ghaiba. How are you so sure?
I wake up and he tells me to
How do you know he tells you? Maybe it's imagination.
lazy.
No. How do you know he whispers? You're right. The most comfortable time is at prayer time. You notice you get a free massage from the devil. You know, when you're sleeping. You sometimes just feel so relaxed. Right at prayer time. You notice you feel sleepy at prayer time. Shaitan is very, very, strategic. But you haven't seen him, but everybody, like, does anybody have a debate about the existence of the devil? Like in universities? Nobody's got a problem. Devil worship is a common practice even among PhDs. And nobody talks about the devil not being seen. Nobody has any questions. Everybody believes in the devil. But people have a problem believing in Allah. He's also in ghaiba. How about Imam Mahdi? Oh, he's in ghaiba, I don't believe him. I said, you have a problem believing in him, but you've got no problem believing in the devil. They're both in ghaiba. They're both hidden. Then you haven't seen, but this one for sure whispers into my ears. So Allah says, okay, since you're so sure about shaitan whispering into your ears, I'm very just. Do you think I will leave you without a good whisperer? No. So the Imam is in ghaiba, he does whisper in my ears, and he's very pragmatic. And by the way, I don't need to see him. Yes, brother.
So as the community leader yourself, famous scholars like Sheikh Saduq, Sheikh Mufid, Muhammad Yaqub al-Qurayni, why they're not like as talked about in this community? Like our most famous scholars, they written this primary source.
When I heard a little bit, I couldn't understand what you said. If you can stand up and just say it.
Okay, so as you're a community leader, right? As you're like around this community, why is like our famous scholars like Sheikh Saduq, Sheikh Mufid,
Yes.
Muhammad Yaqub al-Qurayni, like these people that wrote our famous, like not Sheikh Mufid, they write our
Yes.
famous primary sources. But why is this like not more talked about in our community? These people like, they have
Well, they're not talked about they are among scholars, they're mentioned all the time. Well, because they're not with us anymore. Is that what you're asking, or?
Why aren't they discussed like in our lectures and stuff? I guess
They do. They're mentioned, but because they were scholars of their times and they had opinions and they had collections, like Kulaini, as you look at Al-Kafi, and he put together Usul al-Kafi and Furu al-Kafi, for example, they're very influential. But are they mentioned? Kulaini is mentioned. Sheikh Mufid, Kitab al-Irshad, for example, is a very popular book that talks about the lives of the 14 Masumin. They were very stellar figures. But listen, Ibn Sina, Al-Khwarizmi, Jabir bin Hayyan, you talk about great scholars that came, Mullah Sadra.
But the thing is, those Sheikh Mufid, Sheikh Saduq, are better than those scholars.
What?
They are better than Ibn Sina or Ibn
Well, I don't know if they're better.
I mean, they wrote our primary sources.
Well, when you look at what Mullah Sadra did with his Asfar, Mullah Sadra, up to the 17th century, people did not discuss the issue of God's presence in scientific ways. Did you know that? The principles of the Kalam argument that was brought forth by Mullah Sadra. Mullah Sadra brought forth the argument of Wajibul Wujud and Mumkinul Wujud. It was a modern premise that was not presented. These other scholars had their opinions and they were all great in their own ways. And people can say this one is better than that one, and I respect that. But I believe all these, by the way, Ibn Sina was a scientist, was a philosopher. He was very broad. And in fact, his discoveries, even of gravity, by the way, we give credit to Isaac Newton for having discovered gravity. Gravity was discovered 700 years before Newton. Yeah, it was already discovered. It just wasn't codified in modern science, and therefore Newton gets, and Isaac Newton was a genius, hands down, he was brilliant. Just like Archimedes was a genius. Just because they were not Muslims doesn't mean anything. But the Muslims had a tremendous influence. Al-Khwarizmi, today by their computers, what are computers driven by?
Hard drive.
Algorithms. Well, hard drive is just a memory storage bank. Algorithms, zeros and ones. You know who came up with that? Al-Khwarizmi. That's why it's called algorithms. Algorithm is actually an extraction from, you know, Arabic numerals. You know how Arabic numerals were codified? Why is the number 1 the way it is, and 2 and 3 and 4? You know why it's called? You know why they're numbered like that?
The angles.
Yeah, because of angles. 1 had 1 angle, 2 had 2 angles, 3 had 3 angles, 4 had 4 angles, 5. So it went all the way to 9, and 0 didn't exist, by the way. 0 was actually introduced by Indians, which was then brought into modern usage by the Italians. But Islam presented 0 in the Quran, and in Arabic it's called sufr. And sufr, when you Latinize it, it becomes 0. So everything in mathematics, majority of it is contribution by Muslims. Yes, brother.
We'll make this the last question.
Sure.
As you said,
Sisters, you didn't ask any question. If you have, I'll get to you. Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
as you said, we're living in the age of distraction, and when I pray, I don't really feel like I'm connected with Allah. Do you mind if you could share, some tips?
Yeah, so my advice to you is look around you. Fall in love with God. Why do you pray?
So it's for me.
I know, but why? What's your real driving force? Like every time it's time to pray, do you feel guilty if you don't pray?
Yes,
Yes. Why do you feel guilty?
because everything Allah has gave me, I don't.
Do you really think that, or do you believe that if you don't pray, something's going to happen to you?
Well, kind of like both.
Like you're going to go to hell?
Yeah, that's true.
Isn't that your driving force?
Yes, that is.
Okay, so if that's the case, don't pray to God because you're afraid of going to hell. Pray to God by looking in the mirror and say, wow. People say to me, show me a miracle. I tell them, look in the mirror. You're the greatest miracle that ever walked. You were nothing, you're wireless, waterproof. Think about it. Self-contained. And you eat all kinds of fancy food. You don't go to a gas station and stick a pipe in your head. You eat fancy foods. And the aroma, and it all is part of energy. It's like, wow. Fall in love with that. Now it's time to pray. Yeah, go thank Him. So I think when, it's hard, it's easy for me to say, but reflect on it. Okay? And a lot of times your spirituality will get stronger when you get sick. Did you notice when you get sick, you pray to God? So why is it when something goes wrong, you become more aware of God? So why don't you thank Him that something is not wrong? Often we don't do that. Like when something's not wrong, I don't need God. That's a contradiction. How about when something is not wrong, we pray to God? When we go to funerals, we talk great about people. But that same person before he died, you didn't even pick up the phone and call that person. But when they die, we stand up in eulogy. Oh, he was my friend. He was a great man. Yeah, but he was alone most of the time. You never picked up the phone to go see him. Yeah, but now the poor guy is dead, so let's give him something before he goes 6 feet down, right? Well, why don't you take care of him before he dies? Like we gossip, but then we regret when they die. Oh, I'm so sorry I spoke bad about you. Forgive me. Yeah, but he's dead. Well, why don't you stop speaking bad about the person before he died? So we have this contradiction in life. Try to figure things out and appreciate it. And for your age, 14, I'll be honest with you, in this modern world today, I look at all of you 14, 15-year-old brothers and sisters. It's very difficult, especially when you're like 12, 13. 12, 13-year-olds are monsters. Typical 12, 13-year-olds in school, they're monsters. I mean, in a nice way.
No, there's no nice.
I know. Listen, sister, I have to be politically correct. Right? Otherwise, no, but really, they're monsters. Okay, believe me. Anyway, why are they monsters? Not because they're monsters. It's because they have an identity crisis. They're just hatching out of their egg, and they're just becoming a person, and they don't know what to do with it. So the only thing they know is how to fight and find faults and throw spitballs and do something, and they just don't know what to do. They're like a wild, they're lost. It's like that chicken who came out of At least the chickens, when they come out of the eggs, they know exactly what to do. Our kids don't know what to do. So I watch these 12, 13-year-olds, they're like wild, and everybody's like attacking them because they're wild, you know. And I said, don't do that. I said, how about we win their hearts, because nobody talks to them at the identity level. That's what I went through. Nobody identified me. I was lost. I had to find my identity. When I found my identity, I became a different person. So I would advise you, when you pray, find your identity. And I'm saying to you sincerely, I deal with your age all the time. Okay? Don't be cocky, don't be arrogant, but you are highly gifted. You have a life ahead of you. Okay? And you have a future ahead of you, and Shaitan doesn't like it. You are his most focused enemy. If I ask Shaitan right now, who do you attack the most? He said those teenagers and teenagers. They're my target. If I can get them early and poison their roots, they will grow my trees. My objective in life was precisely to fight that. How do I stop that poison so Shaitan doesn't get to it? And Allah says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah doesn't change your affairs. You change it first. And we need to do that. And a lot of kids, teenagers look at me, oh brother, it's all religious. We can do a lot of good, fun things in life, but we're going to do it a certain way.
I'm going to ask one final question. There's a couple questions.
You have a question? Well, we had a sister in the back there, sorry. Can I ask?
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
How do you deal with being religiously depressed, or just not spiritually?
You feel depressed?
No, having religious lows.
Religious lows.
Lows? When you go through, hang around people who have religious propensities, what's going to happen is, if you're hanging around people, when you're low, they're probably high. They're going to stop you from going low. That's why it's a smart move to be around people who will protect you. I remember in university, what saved me, by the way, was I had a group of brothers from Saudi, from Kuwait, from Bahrain, from Iran, from Iraq. Okay? Amazing brothers. Some of them were married with their wives and kids, doing PhDs, whatever. And I was circled with them. And I was a lost person in university. I was in Colorado, 1,600 miles away from home. You would not see a single Muslim on campus. There were, but they're all hidden. And in my dorm, I think I was the only Muslim probably. And I'm living with two other non-Muslims in my room. I'm in a triple. And Thursday night, the music starts bouncing. Friday, the whole building is shaking. Saturday, they're swimming in alcohol. I'm talking about kegs, those big kegs. They would roll kegs, and I'm watching them. They're coming in from the back doors. I said, what's this? Oh, this one's going to that room. We're going to get drunk this weekend. And then you go outside, there are 5 nightclubs on campus. I'm not exaggerating. Nightclubs. Just take a step, and there's a nightclub waiting for you. Boys and girls are going to each other's rooms, having fun. And here I'm living in this cesspool and looking around like, what's going on? It was that crazy, But now, if I hung around there, I was so depressed. And subhanAllah, since you asked, one quick point. I was so depressed, I was so down, I was crying because, I was out of my cocoon. And here I'm on campus and I'm seeing I don't know what to do. I'm lonely, I feel depressed. I was very depressed. I said, I'm not going to date girls. There were very beautiful girls on campus. Remember, my university had some of the, I don't want to say, but, a lot of these